They don't disrespect you because you're weak. They disrespect you because you're predictable. Too easy to read. Too easy to reach. Too easy to forget. You hold the door. You apologize first. You text back fast. You explain. Clarify. Soften. Bend. And somewhere along the way, they stopped listening. You thought kindness would earn respect. That being honest, generous, available would mean something. But in a world built on leverage, predictability is not virtue. It's vulnerability. Machiavelli warned us, if you must choose between being loved or being feared, choose fear. But he wasn't advocating cruelty. He was exposing a law of power. Familiarity breeds contempt. The more you explain, the less you're understood. The more you give, the less you're valued. The more you try to be liked, the easier you are to leave. Let me ask you something. Have you ever sat in a room and felt like you didn't exist? Have you ever watched people walk past your efforts, your loyalty, your presence, like they were stepping over a puddle? That's not because you lacked value. It's because you made your value too accessible. And in the economy of human attention, what's too accessible becomes disposable. This isn't about becoming cruel. It's about becoming calculated. Because silence, when used right, is not absence. It's authority. Stillness, when intentional, doesn't mean apathy. It means you've stopped bleeding for those who never learned how to bandage you. And the moment you stop explaining yourself, people start listening. The moment you stop trying to be chosen, they start trying to keep you. And the moment you become unreadable, you become unforgettable. This is what Machiavelli understood. That power doesn't live in words. It lives in presence, in mystery, in the discipline to hold back, while the world demands you unravel. Because when your presence becomes a question, it begins to carry the weight of an answer no one's ready to hear. And that weight is the beginning of everything they never expected from you. That's where it starts. Let's go deeper into the pain you've been hiding in plain sight. There's a kind of pain no one talks about. It doesn't scream. It doesn't scar. It doesn't even leave a mark. But it stays. And it drains you one quiet moment at a time. It's the pain of being overlooked, of giving your best and being remembered last, of showing up for people who never showed up for you. You felt it. In that meeting when your ideas were passed over. At the dinner table when your silence wasn't noticed. In the relationship when your patience was mistaken for permission. And what makes it worse is that no one sees it happening. Because you were calm. Because you were kind. Because you never made a scene. So your pain became invisible. And your presence predictable. You were taught that kindness is a virtue. That forgiveness is strength. That loyalty is the glue that holds everything together. But no one taught you this kindness, without boundaries, becomes bait. Forgiveness without distance becomes permission. Loyalty without strategy becomes self-destruction. This isn't just philosophy. It's history. Socrates, the man who taught the world how to think, was sentenced to death by those he tried to enlighten. Jesus, the symbol of unconditional love, was crucified by the very people he forgave. Joan of Arc, fearless and faithful, was burned alive by the kingdom she tried to protect. Even now, it hasn't changed. The employee who never says no is the one overworked and underpaid. The friend who always listens is the one no one asks about. The partner who always forgives is the one most taken for granted. The man who's always understanding is the one most abandoned. The woman who never complains is the one most ignored. Why? Because we don't protect what's always available. We don't cherish what's always there. We don't fear losing what never dares to walk away. The tragedy isn't that good people get hurt. It's that they're hurt silently, repeatedly, without warning, and then blamed for allowing it. You tell yourself, I should be stronger. I should be clearer. I should have said something. But you weren't weak. You were just taught the wrong rules. You thought consistency meant value. That love meant endurance. That silence meant maturity. But here's the brutal truth. What you tolerate teaches people how to treat you. And what they see too often, they start to forget. Respect doesn't die in one big moment. It dies in 1,000 small ones you thought didn't matter. The delayed text, the backhanded compliment, the missed apology, the way they stop asking how you feel because they already assume you'll be fine. And you play your part. You smile. You swallow it. You say, it's okay, even when it's not, because you thought that being nice would protect you. That being low maintenance made you lovable. That being silent made you strong. But the world doesn't respect the agreeable. It respects the unavailable, not because mystery is sexy, but because mystery is safe from abuse. People fear distance. They question what they don't fully understand. They guard their words when they're not sure where they stand with you. But you made it too easy. You stayed. You gave. You explained. You forgave. And now they don't fear losing you, because they've never had to. This is the hidden pain of the kind-hearted. You don't get hated. You get overlooked. You don't get fought. You get forgotten. And that hurts. In a way, betrayal never could. Because betrayal ends with a cut. But neglect, it erodes you slowly, until one day, you look in the mirror and wonder where you went. So ask yourself, was it really that they couldn't see you? Or had you made yourself too visible to be noticed? Because sometimes, the ones who vanish first are the ones who were never truly seen to begin with. You thought it was personal, but it never was. It wasn't about your heart. It was about your pattern. Because if you want to know why good people get ignored, you have to stop blaming your kindness and start understanding your wiring. Because the truth is brutal. The brain is not built for fairness. It's built for efficiency, for survival, and in its cold logic, anything predictable is non-threatening. And anything non-threatening is easily dismissed. Your kindness, classified as safe. Your patience filed under non-urgent. Your loyalty, tagged as always there. You become psychological wallpaper, always present, never noticed. But here's where it gets deeper. Humans don't just respond to love. We respond to tension, to uncertainty, to the unknown. That's why the boss who barely speaks commands the room. That's why the partner who holds something back feels more magnetic. That's why the friend who's hard to read is often the most respected. It's not manipulation. It's human design. We chase what we don't fully understand. We value what we fear losing. We protect what we feel we could never replace. So when you give everything up front, your thoughts, your time, your energy, people stop leaning in because you've already laid yourself bare. You think vulnerability builds connection, and it can. But vulnerability without discernment becomes exposure. It's like handing someone the blueprint to your emotional core. They didn't earn it, so they don't protect it. Machiavelli knew this. He didn't preach silence out of fear. He preached silence out of strategy. He understood. The one who speaks less holds more power. The one who reveals little controls the frame. And the one who doesn't respond right away forces others to think twice. Let's go even deeper. This isn't just philosophy. It's biology. The brain's selective attention system is built to filter out what's familiar, what's constant, what doesn't change. The loudest sound in the room. You notice it. But the hum of the AC, you stopped hearing it 10 minutes ago. That's how people start treating your presence as background noise. And the terrifying part, you trained them to. By always responding fast. By always forgiving. By always being the understanding one. They don't guard their words with you. Because they've never had to fear the consequence of your silence. They don't value your time. Because you've always given it freely. They don't miss you. Because you've never left. Now ask yourself, who gets respected in your life? Is it the one who overshares, or the one who speaks in careful doses? Is it the one who's always online, always available, always explaining, or the one who moves in silence, but whose absence feels loud, even in nature? This law holds. The lion isn't feared because it roars all day. It's feared because you don't know when it will move. The snake doesn't announce its presence. It waits. It calculates. It strikes once. Power isn't loud. Power is unreadable. So, let me ask you again. When was the last time you let someone miss you? When was the last time your silence made someone nervous? When was the last time your absence taught someone your value? Because that is the true currency of power. It's not how much you give. It's how carefully you choose, when and to whom you give it. Respect isn't given to the most open heart. It's given to the most self-controlled mind. And the tragedy. The kindest people, the ones who should be most cherished, are often the least feared. Not because they aren't strong, but because they never made anyone earn access to that strength. So here's the shift. You don't become respected by being louder. You become respected by being less available. By making your energy something people work to deserve. By creating psychological tension in your presence. That doesn't mean becoming distant out of bitterness. It means becoming calculated out of wisdom. Machiavelli said, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both." But the fear he spoke of wasn't fear of cruelty. It was fear of mystery, fear of losing your favor, fear of being on the outside, of your silence. Because when people can't predict you, they tread carefully. And when they can't access you at will, they begin to respect the weight of your presence. And that is when everything begins to shift. When your silence starts speaking louder than your kindness ever did. You didn't just get hurt. You were trained to stay quiet, trained to be reasonable, trained to make peace even when the war was inside you. But here's the truth no one told you. Pain doesn't always come from cruelty. It comes from repetition, from the same emotional mistake, played on loop. In the name of being good. Let's break it down. 1. You explain what should never need explaining. Someone disrespects you, and your first instinct is to clarify, to soften, to justify your own boundary. I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to help. I only said it because I care. But every time you explain what should be self-evident, you shrink your presence. Powerful people don't justify. They state. Then, they hold silence, like a blade. When your boundaries need paragraphs, they stop being boundaries. They become negotiations. And your authority dies in the fine print. 2. You forgive without requiring transformation. Yes, forgiveness is strength, but forgiveness without consequence is permission. A signal that says, there's no cost for hurting me. So they come back. Some mistake, new excuse. And you let them in. Not because you're weak, but because you confuse healing with being accommodating. But healing isn't keeping people close. It's teaching them absence, silence, space, distance. That's how you change behavior. Because if there's no pain in the loss, then what exactly did you forgive? 3. You confuse honesty with overexposure. You were told, be open, be real. So you shared everything, your fears, your wounds, your past. But here's the truth. Honesty without discretion is emotional nudity. They didn't earn your story, so they didn't protect it. And now, what was sacred to you is just gossip to them. Real connection doesn't come from oversharing. It comes from restraint, from knowing when not to speak until someone proves they can hold what you carry. 4. You ignore small violations. It starts with a joke at your expense, a message left unread, a compliment that cuts just a little too deep. You feel it, but you let it slide. Maybe they didn't mean it. It's not that serious. I don't want to overreact. But here's the Machiavellian truth. The big betrayals are built on foundations of the small ones you excused. Every time you stayed silent, you trained them to expect you always would. Respect isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in micro decisions, where you draw the line. When you don't smile, how you respond to the first red flag. You either confront the small or get consumed by the big. 5. You mistake being needed for being respected. You think if people depend on you, they'll value you. So you over-deliver. You fix everything. You show up before they even ask. And for a while it works. But over time, you're no longer seen as powerful. You're seen as useful, like a charger, like a search bar, like background Wi-Fi. Essential, but never sacred. And the moment they no longer need what you offer, they disappear because they never respected you. They used you. That's the cycle. You overgive, they expect. You burn out, they replace you. And the most dangerous part, you blame yourself. Maybe if I gave more, they'd love me right. Maybe if I just tried harder. But giving more to the wrong person doesn't earn love. It erodes self-worth. So let me be clear. These mistakes don't mean you're weak. They mean you were never taught how power works. You were trained to be agreeable, to be likable, to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. But here's the Machiavellian shift. Being likable is not power. Being respected is, and you don't earn that through exposure. You earn it through discretion, through boundaries, through silence. The power to say, you don't get that part of me. You don't get another chance. You don't get my words, only my distance. This isn't cruelty. It's clarity. Because until you change your strategy, your kindness will keep getting weaponized against you. Your empathy will keep being mistaken for obedience. And your love will keep ending in exhaustion. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop being needed and start being respected? Because the moment you draw that line is the moment the world rewrites how it sees you. At some point, you stop asking, why do they treat me like this? And you start asking, what did I allow them to believe about who I am? That is the turning point. It's not emotional. It's strategic. It's the moment pain gives way to clarity. When the story shifts from victimhood to sovereignty. Because here's the part most people will never admit. The world doesn't treat you based on your heart. It treats you based on your frame, your posture, your stillness, your silence, the boundaries you enforce without ever raising your voice. This is where we step into philosophy. into the mechanics of presence. And no one understood this better than Niccolo Machiavelli. Most people misunderstood him. They think he glorified corruption. They say he admired manipulators. They reduce him to a tyrant's handbook. But if you read deeper, you find something else. Machiavelli wasn't promoting cruelty. He was diagnosing reality. He wasn't creating the rules. He was revealing them. It is much safer to be feared than loved. If one cannot be both. That sentence has haunted society for 500 years. Not because it's evil, but because it's accurate. Because love, without boundaries, fades. But fear, when rooted in respect, anchors. You don't have to be a tyrant, but you do have to carry the capacity for silence, for distance, for withdrawal. Let me explain. In every human interaction, there's a silent question being asked. What happens if I cross you? And if the answer is nothing, they'll forgive me. Then they will. Respect doesn't come from your willingness to endure. It comes from your ability to walk away, to hold still, to withhold, to protect yourself without asking permission. And that's where we bring in Carl Jung. Jung spoke of integrating the shadow, the dark side of the psyche we hide, deny, suppress. But he didn't say to avoid the shadow. He said to own it. Because only the person who knows how to harm and chooses not to is truly moral. Otherwise, you're not good. You're harmless. And harmless people don't command respect. They attract control. You must become dangerous. Not in behavior, in potential. So that when you say nothing, people hear thunder. So that when you leave a room, the silence follows. Now enter Nietzsche, the philosopher of fire. He didn't admire obedience. He admired self-overcoming. Not by being agreeable, but by becoming untouchable. He wrote, "He who cannot put his thoughts on ice should not enter the heat of dispute." In other words, if you can't control your inner fire, you're not powerful. You're combustible. Let's thread them together. Machiavelli taught you to be respected through restraint. Jung taught you to own the parts of you that can destroy and discipline them. Nietzsche taught you to become sovereign, not through peace, but through self-mastery. And now, you begin to see the truth. Power doesn't come from being feared. It comes from being unreadable, unshakable, indéniable. Think of the people you remember, the ones who walk into a room without saying a word, and suddenly, everything around them adjusts. They don't command respect with noise. They command it with gravity. They speak last. They move slow. They never overshare. And yet, you think about them more than anyone else. That is presence. And presence is strategy. Let's make it real. Think of a lion. It doesn't roar all day. It doesn't chase every squirrel in the jungle. It doesn't need to. It moves slowly, silently, deliberately, and everything in its path feels the tension of restraint. Not because the lion is cruel, but because everyone knows it could be. That's your new standard. You don't explain. You don't plead. You don't try to convince the world of your goodness. You move like someone who can destroy but doesn't need to. Because people don't respect those who give everything. They respect those who make them earn access. So from now on, every boundary you hold is not a wall. It's a signal that says, I know who I am. I know what I allow. And I know what I'll walk away from, without a word. And when your silence becomes a frame, not a reaction, the world will finally meet you with the weight you once begged for. You've heard the logic. You've felt the pain. You've understood the philosophy. But none of that matters until something inside you snaps. Not violently, not emotionally, but irrevocably. It's the moment you stop seeing yourself as the nice one and start seeing yourself as a sovereign force. Not because you're angry, but because you're done. Done apologizing before anyone's offended. Done explaining things that should be self-evident. Done softening your tone to make other people feel comfortable while you slowly disappear from your own life. This is not a behavioral tweak. It's an identity fracture. A psychological death, followed by a strategic resurrection. Let me show you what it sounds like. You stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Do I like who I become around them?" You stop saying, "I hope they understand me," and start declaring, "I no longer owe them my clarity." You stop giving endless second chances, not because you're cold, but because your time is sacred. And sacred things are not handed out. They're earned. This shift doesn't make you bitter. It makes you precise. You begin to see the cost of being constantly available. You begin to feel the weight of every yes you said when you wanted to say no. You begin to remember what it felt like to have peace before your phone became a leash. And something deep inside of you whispers, "No more." No more giving your energy away like it's infinite. No more lowering your standards just to be tolerated. No more explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't become cruel. You become unapologetically clear, because here's what they never taught you. The version of you that needed to be liked by everyone is the same version that kept getting betrayed by everyone. That version needs to die. Not gently, not slowly, but completely. And in its place, a new version rises. One who doesn't beg to be invited in. One who doesn't fear being misunderstood. One who knows that peace isn't found in approval but in absence. Absence of drama. Absence of noise. Absence of people who think your silence means permission. This is the psychological pivot. You stop negotiating your value. You start naming your terms. You stop proving yourself. You start letting distance do the talking. Because in a world addicted to noise, silence becomes power. And when people feel that your attention is no longer guaranteed, they begin to treat it as sacred. This isn't arrogance. This is spiritual self-respect. And the moment it clicks, your life changes. You don't chase anymore. You let go, not out of hate, out of truth. You don't seek closure, because silence is closure. And walking away without looking back is a statement far louder than any speech. You don't need validation. You are validation. You are proof that rising doesn't require noise. That disappearing doesn't mean defeat. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not respond. Machiavelli called it distance. Jung called it integration. Nietzsche called it self-overcoming. But you call it coming home. Not to who the world told you to be, but to who you were. Before you shrank yourself for survival. And now, you stand taller. You walk slower. You speak less. But when you do, every word lands like a verdict. Not because you're trying to be feared, but because your peace has become expensive. That's the shift. You don't become harder. You become heavier. You don't become louder. You become undeniable. And once you become undeniable, you never have to explain again. You simply exist, and everything around you adjusts. So you've changed on the inside. You feel it. The weight, the stillness, the calm that no longer begs to be liked. But now comes the real test. How do you carry that power into the world without saying a word? Because true power doesn't live in speeches. It lives in presence. It speaks through posture. It vibrates through silence. Let's break it down. 1. In conversation. Speak less. Pause more. Own your words. The average person speaks to be heard. You speak to anchor the room. Don't rush to answer. Let silence stretch. Let the weight of the pause do the talking. Make them earn your response. Drop, I think. Maybe. Just my opinion. Replace them with, this is what I see. Here's where I stand. That's the line. Speak like the room is already listening, because it is even when they pretend it's not. And when you pause before you speak, you introduce gravity, and gravity commands attention. 2. In relationships, stop giving what they haven't earned. Don't confuse kindness with currency. Love is not supply and demand, and your presence should never be free to access. You want to build respect, match effort, mirror energy, and when it's not mutual, subtract yourself. No speech, no guilt trip, just absence. Because the most dangerous kind of presence is the one that disappears without warning. They won't forget you not because of what you gave, but because of what they lost. 3. In conflict, don't react. Respond only if it serves your power. They want you emotional. They want you to explain, explode, justify. Why? Because rage is readable. And when you're readable, you're controllable. Instead, pause, hold eye contact. Let silence do the burning. And if you speak, make it surgical. 1 sentence, maybe 2, delivered like a scalpel, not a scream. Let them feel your composure like a wall, one they can't move. Because when you don't flinch, you become the mirror that exposes their chaos. 4. In leadership, speak last, move first. Decide without apology. Whether it's business or boundaries, you don't ask for consensus. You set tone. Let others talk. Let them reveal. Then you enter with precision. Clear, calm, final. You don't explain every decision. You don't decorate truth to be digestible. You don't ask permission to assert your clarity. That's leadership. Not in titles, but in tension. People follow silence they can't read, faster than noise they understand. 5. In daily life, be harder to reach. Share less. Guard your peace. Not everyone deserves excess. Not everyone deserves updates. Not everyone deserves explanations. Make your time expensive. Make your attention rare. Make your silence louder than your words. Practical power means delaying replies, not announcing your next move. Letting "no" to be a complete sentence. Because when people stop being sure about where they stand with you, they stand straighter. That's influence. Machiavelli would have called it controlled perception. Nietzsche would have called it self-overcoming. Jung would have called it the integration of restraint. But you don't have to call it anything. You live it. Because power isn't posturing. It's discipline. It's stillness. It's the ability to say nothing and still shift the room. So let them wonder. Let them notice your distance. Let them ask what changed. You don't owe them an answer. You never did. Because true power doesn't explain, doesn't chase, doesn't beg. It walks in silence and forces the world to respond. And if this made something inside you go quiet, don't ignore it. That silence you feel right now, that's you remembering who you are. So, here you are, no longer the one who explains everything, no longer the one who bends to be chosen, no longer the one who gives so much that you forget what it feels like to keep something for yourself. You've changed, not with fire, not with rage, but with stillness, like steel, forged in silence. like mountains, formed beneath pressure. And now, the world sees it. But they can't explain it. They can't name it. Because it's not something you say. It's something you've become. You walk slower. You move with intention. You speak less, but when you do, your voice lands like gravity. You don't enter rooms to be noticed. You enter them knowing you're not there to impress. You are the presence. You don't chase answers. You let silence echo. You don't explain your decisions. You let your boundaries speak for you. And those who used to test your patience now hesitate before speaking your name. Because something happened. You stopped trying to be everything for everyone. You stopped performing humility as a survival strategy. You stopped shrinking so others could feel tall. You realized something most never do. Peace is expensive. And not everyone can afford your presence. You're no longer addicted to being liked. You've discovered something more potent. Being remembered. Being missed. Being respected. Even in your absence. And here's the paradox. You didn't raise your voice. You lowered your availability. You didn't become louder. You became less accessible. You didn't demand respect. You became someone who made disrespect to feel like a risk. You are no longer easy to figure out. No longer easy to reach. No longer easy to shake. And they feel it. In how you look at them without rushing to comfort. In how you pause instead of reacting. In how you walk away before they know what they've lost. You've become the kind of person who isn't feared because of violence, isn't loved because of obedience, but is respected because no one quite knows what you'll do next. That's power. Not because you dominate, but because you don't need to. You hold back. You withdraw. You vanish. And your silence teaches louder than your presence ever could. You are not cold. You are calculated. You are not cruel. You are clear. And that clarity, it makes you unmistakable. The old you needed to be chosen, needed to be praised, needed to be seen. The new you chooses, commands, and creates silence that speaks. This is the new face of strength, not noise, not perfection, not the desperate need to be loved, but ownership of time, of space, of energy, of self. And now, when people see you again, they don't say, "What happened to you?" They say, "I can't read you anymore." And that's exactly the point. Because unreadable means untouchable. And untouchable means you've finally returned to yourself. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to be explained. You're not here to be chosen by people who never had the eyes to see you. You're here to be sovereign, to walk like someone whose presence is not a request but a recalibration of the room. You are not soft. You are silent. You are not weak. You are strategic. And that silence, it's not emptiness. It's ownership. That stillness. It's not apathy. It's precision. Because the version of you who used to beg for clarity has now become the clarity. The one who used to explain now speaks through absence. The one who used to chase now disappears without noise and leaves an echo. They will talk. They will guess. They will wonder what changed. Let them. Because you've stopped proving yourself. You've stopped negotiating your worth. You've stopped being available to the chaos of the unqualified. Now, if they don't value your words, you give them your silence. If they don't respect your time, you give them your distance. If they don't honor your presence, you remind them by taking it away. You are no longer emotional collateral. You are not a backup plan. You are not the understanding one they run to after burning bridges behind them. You are no longer here to be convenient. You are here to be complete. And from this moment on, you do not lower your standards to be kept. You raise your boundaries to be remembered. This is the Machiavellian truth. Not about manipulation, not about cruelty, but about self-rule. The ability to walk alone and be followed, without ever asking to be. The strength to disappear and become louder in your absence than you ever were in your presence. Because true power, it isn't noisy, it isn't charming, it isn't perfect. It's quiet, it's disciplined, it's unavailable. So let them wonder. Let them search for the old you. He's gone. She's gone. That version died quietly, in a room where no one was listening. And the one who walks out of that silence now doesn't explain, doesn't plead, doesn't kneel. They move, and the world adjusts. Because now, you are not feared for the damage you cause. You are feared because no one can predict your silence. And that is what makes kings walk alone and still be followed.